Hello and welcome to this week's OTR Love Team Time Trial series. My name is Andy and I'll take you through the highlight show today. And I believe we got 12 teams and we'll be battling out in race 4. And this is the point in the series where teams go up or go down. So first of all, RTR, Australia Koalas, OTR Eureka and OTR Wicked, and we'll do this 3 times and hopefully you'll see all the mistakes I've been making as we go along. So the idea here is can we see how quickly these teams get into a pace line? Ooh, so OTR Eureka, and who is it? Jerry has just been dropped. So he's got, 11 metres, 12 metres to catch up. But they're first into that pace line. Although it's really difficult to use a camera when you're right next to the tree, by the way. And I've requested RGT to do some trimming the trees because you just can't see anything. Next up, I think it's between, so let's say it's RTR next and Koalas very closely followed, and then finally OTR Wicked, who still don't seem to be in that pace line very well, with Andy at the back just pushing up. Next we got Australia Dingoes, OTR Blue, OTR Ultraviolet and 3R Mushroom. So again, let's see how quickly you get into that pace line. And I think the fewer team members, it's probably the easier to get into that line. Some battling going on there. So who's first? I would say Dingoes are, well, let's say OTR Blue, then Dingoes, then Ultraviolet, then Mushroom. Yeah, but if you look at, what is it, Ash, he's got a 25 metre gap, really? And then Ian was off the back as well. So you really need to get together and work together as a team. OTR Blue, they have 4 riders. And who else? Everyone else seems to be fine. Okay, this is where I messed up. AESRT, listening to their commentary and talking about the tactics and so on, I completely forgot that they needed to record the race. So when it got to 0, I went, and pressed record. So here you go. And Pokemotion, I think Jonathan did something similar. So they caught last 10 seconds or so of the 1 minute start. So instead of showing that 10 seconds, we just didn't bother showing it. But Jonathan knows that anyway. And it's really good of him to record the race for as well. Because we haven't seen Pokemotion on this season's highlight show, apart from right at the beginning where we tried to work out what leagues we were going to be in. So we have OTR Black and a nice pace line, AESRT, Australia Sharks with a big gap that need to close. There's a couple of gaps there as well, you can see, between Marco and Ben. And then Mark as well, so they just need to close those gaps. So looking at that, it's really important to get into that pace line as quickly as you can from the start. Now looking at the 5 kilometre time splits, again we'll do this in groups of 3. For RTR, we've got a new rider, so Christopher is now out front. He's about 8 meters now. They're closing up. So Christopher does what I called a John Paul. So he led the race and finished the race and did 100% at the front for the whole team. And again, you've got some gaps there. So the two new riders, both Christopher and Philip, must be quite strong because they're quite close together throughout the whole of the race, and then you get the gaps for the rest of the team. So they need to try and close those where they can. Australia Koalas. This team's been together for quite a while now. But we do have Craig in here today. So let's see how he gets on as well. But it looks as though he didn't start the race. Or he dropped very soon after the start of the race, unfortunately. So we still have Wendy, Dave, Bryce and Michelle. Next up, Australia Dingoes. Look at that pace line. OTR Blue. Gordon's still trying to sort out steering. He will get there. OTR Ultraviolet, again with 4 riders. With we've got Lutz. Lutz, Neil, Tony, and Jim or James. Although Lutz is the one doing the recording, so thank you, Lutz, for that. And 3R Mushroom, we've got JP, Fred, Wayne, Rajesh is back, so welcome Rajesh again. Mikhail, and I'm recording. And with OTR Blue, we have Peter, Adam, Gordon, and Robin. And again, I'm recording for them. So Robin's had some technicals during the event as well, so you'll see him going backwards and forwards quite often. So hopefully they'll be able to sort that out. And I think going forward it's going to be interesting to see what the tactics are on the how to use the steering and how to protect that last rider. So if you look at all of the races going forward, you see that last rider, it's a Marco there at the end. He's now dropped, but he was the last rider and couldn't get back on. So how do you protect that last rider? And this is an interesting one looking at AESRT now. And I thought this was really interesting in that the person doing the pull earlier on, Jojo, he goes in behind Aku and Arnoud, and he's protected there, so he's not having to go into the red at all. But he was 4 clicks out to the left and then eased back, while you got Aku and Arnoud spread out at the back, so it gave them like a funnel to go into. You might want to see that a bit more. It's the only time they do it, so that'd be interesting. OTR Black, yeah, Tony, Keith, Kevin, Peter and Rich. Really strong teams. And finally we have Pokemotion, Jonathan, Jan, Kader and John Samut. Great to see you guys. Again, we haven't seen you for the whole of the series, so welcome. And Australia Sharks, we have who do we have? David, Marco, Toby, Ben, Jean-Marc, and Mark himself, Mark Wardrop. So far, the only teams that have got any closer was Australia Sharks and AESRT, and they were a second apart. And what I've tried to do with the time splits is show you where the splits were in the actual elevation as well. So looking where we are now, we've got Australia Koalas, Michelle leading with Wendy, and then you've got a slight gap to Dave, but it does look like Bryce has also dropped, I assume with the technical, so there's only 3, and that's going to hamper their ability to try and push on, and they need to keep that 3 in order to record the result for the race. With RTR, again, you've got Christopher out on front, big gap to Philip, and then the rest of the team. So we need to get Christopher working with the team to try and bring them along, but not keep opening up those gaps. OTR Eureka have had some technicals as well. I was talking to Stephen earlier in the week. So they've lost Jerry. So you've still got Stephen, Brian, and Alfred there. Okay, looking at Australia Dingoes. Where are the Dingoes? You got Ian, Ash, Ben, and Scott, and they're all together. Scott floats between Australia Dingoes and Australia Sharks, depending on if Sharks need anything or if Dingoes need another rider. And they're doing okay, really. It's nice to see the pace line towards the middle of the road. It's easier to record, and I have absolutely no idea what happened to the feed on 3R Mushroom. It just went completely blank. OTR Blue, lovely pace line with Peter out front, Gordon, Robin, and Adam, and they've already dropped me. OTR Ultraviolet with Jim out front doing the pulls, then Lutz, Neil, and Tony. Though Tony's got 12 metre gap, just need to close that up quickly. I'm assuming that Neil's going to be helping him out because he's just dropping back a little bit more as well. And 3R Mushroom, you got Wayne up front with JP, Mikhail, Fred, Rajesh, and again, I've been dropped. Don't like this idea of being dropped all the time. So last in this 10 kilometre split, OTR Black. It's interesting when if you look at Black there, with Tony just coming off the front, if you pull out way too far, you're going to lose all of that draft from the rest of your team. And what happens is you either go back further and it's a harder pull back in, but Tony's really strong anyway. But they have lost Rich though. So Rich did a lot of the pulls at the beginning. But yeah, they've lost Rich, and he's 290 metres behind now. ASRT, Jojo up front, with Dennis, Arnoud, Aku. Really strong team as well. But I've not seen that approach for helping Jojo back into the group. And who else? So Sharks, we haven't talked much about Sharks with David, Marco, Toby, Ben, Jean-Marc and Mark Wardrop. But looks like Marco has, he's 1.2 kilometres behind. So between the 5 and 10k, we've lost Marco. Right, so here we got ASRT and Sharks have swapped, and also Australia Koalas and RTR. So Christopher's doing an interesting job pushing RTR up that leaderboard. But if you look, there's quite a few of the teams with 1 or 2 seconds gaps. So it'll be interesting to see how they get on with the 5-15 kilometre time splits. So looking at Koalas, again, they're going to be hampered because they only have 3 at this stage. With losing both Craig and Bryce earlier on. OTR Eureka, a bit of a gap between Stephen. Oh no, my apologies, they've just come back again. but they have lost Jerry. RTR, again with Christopher in front, they're looking closer now as a team, but what you still find is those gaps, so they do need to try and close those gaps up. And every time you're in red, so the power numbers that are in red, it means you're not saving enough. So if you're too close to the rider in front, you're trying to push them along, and that reduces your drag effect. So you look at the gap again with RTR. OTR Wicked, with David out front, Sean, Paul, Andy Mack and Shane. And we got OTR Blue. So a slight gap. Gordon's still trying to sort out his steering. Hopefully that'll get sorted out really soon, because he's probably doing more kilometres than absolutely anybody else. And he's had to close those gaps quite quickly, so he's using a lot of energy to do so. And Australia Dingoes, again, they're down to 3. So what was it? Did we say Ash? Yeah, Ash. So Ian had gone, so Ash, Ben and Scott. And then you have Australia Sharks. Ooh, so the Sharks have come down. Yes, they had done, hadn't they? From the last group. And Ultraviolet. Again, good strong team, 4 riders. And we'll keep seeing this play on how they want to handle the pace line, whether it's 1 or whether it's 2 side by side. I think if you have it 2 side by side, it limits you on which way you can go, left or right. But it's down to each of the individual teams. Nice to see some of the teams having the same bike, the same kit. Not all the teams, but we're getting there. And I attended a ride with James Ogilvy called the OTR 250. So you're not allowed to do more than 250 watts, or average 250 watts. And it was incredible how you get pushed from another rider. I didn't really notice this until you're actually in a ride with lots of other riders rather than working as a team and riding together. How they actually do push you out the way, or push you to one side of the track. But yeah, interesting. I got pushed quite a lot. Okay, OTR Black, it's Keith out front with Kevin, Tony, Peter, and as I say, we lost Rich earlier on. Pokemotion working well together, and slight gaps. AESRT, again, a really strong team, and what we're finding is AESRT and Pokemotion are working really well and competing side by side. So if you look at what's going on now, so AES have overtaken Pokemotion, 3R Mushroom have overtaken Black, Australia Sharks have gone down 2, Dingoes have gone up by 1 against OTR Blue, and RTR have overtaken both Eureka and Koalas, to then be, 3rd from the bottom, right next to OTR Wicked. So again, Christopher, I think, is doing a really good job, but you still have that gap. OTR Wicked, we've lost Derek and Shane, and they're going back towards me on the 20-kilometre time splits. So you got Paul out front with Andy Mack and Shane, and David's been dropped as well, but he's not as far behind, so they've only got 3 left now. So again, limits what they can do going forward. they need to record the race result. And you again got a small gap between Glenn and Carolyn. Koalas are doing really good for 3. They're fantastically well. So they've overtaken OTR Eureka. Oh, looks as though OTR Wicked, so Paul's dropped, so they've had to slow down a bit to try and keep him back. That's one of the problems that you find with just having 3 left. And again, Gordon, I think, more steering issues, so he's just racing back into that group. Gordon's very, very strong as a rider. It's absolutely amazing. I don't know how he does it. So Robin out front with Peter and Gordon, but they have lost Adam Morgan as well. So what, he's 1.7 kilometers back now. Ultraviolet, Jim out front, but they have lost Lutz, and Lutz is our cameraman, so we'll see quite a lot of him going forward. So you got Jim, Noel and Tony. So I'm going to use their timings to work out when they cross the line. Basically when their numbers go to 0, I'm assuming they've crossed the line already. Dingo's working really well with Ash, Scott and Ben. And Mark out front with Australia Sharks. And no other drops from them. I wonder whether Lutz had a technical, because he's a very strong rider. Finally, on 20 kilometre splits, you have OTR Black with Tony out front, Keith, Kevin and Peter. 3 on Mushroom. Unfortunately, Fred has been dropped. So you now have Wayne, JP, Rajesh and Mikhail. I wonder if TJ is going to come back to the team. It'd be really good to see him back. Jonathan out front. So who is it? So Jonathan, you have Jan, then John, then Kada, and no one's been dropped. Although the gaps are opening up. Just need to watch that. And for ASRT, wow, strong group, strong team, really close to, yeah, that's all I can say. Jojo out front, with Dennis, Aku and Arnud. And Keith for OTR Black just trying to get back in. And really nice pace line there from 3R Mushroom. So it still looks as though ASRT are ahead of Pokemotion. And I don't think we have that many changes. So there were a huge number of changes for the 15 kilometre split. Right, for the finish. So this is the last 2 minutes of the race. So you normally get towards the kite and then that 1k dash to the line. Most of these teams have got 3 riders, so the only one that hasn't is RTR. And again, you've got Christopher out front, with then Philip, RTR, Philip, Sean, Glenn and Carolyn. And again, Glenn and Carolyn, bit of gap. OTR Wicked with Shane, Andy, Paul, and you've got, as I say, we've dropped David, Derek and Shane are now on my wheel, which is nice to see. and we had a chat as we were going along as well, just waiting for the team to finish, and I was giving them pointers as to how far they were ahead, and when they would get to the 500, the 250, the 100 meter marker. So yeah, it's quite nice. Christopher out in front for RTR. Who is it? Alfred out on front for OTR Eureka with 200 meters to go. Dave out front, then Michelle, then Wendy for Australia Koalas, and they've got 130 meters to go. And again, big gaps opening up for RTR just before the line, and everyone else working really well closely together. So well done, OTR Eureka, Australia Koalas, RTR, and OTR Wicked. Right, OTR Blue, Peter out front with Gordon and Robin. Ash, Scott, and Ben for Dingoes. Big gap now opening up. So kind of like what you got Ben out front with Mark and John Mark. But you got that gap to Toby as well. So Toby's going to try and have to close that back, but not with what he's doing at the moment. There's going to be just those three going to the line. And again, here we see Lutz, and looking at the times, he's still got Jim out front, or James, Tony and Neil. Are we going to stay as a team? Gordon out front for OTR Blue, no issues with steering. Peter just overtaken slightly. And then Robin on the rear. Who's going to get to the line? It won't be Lutz. Come on, Australia. Australia. Dingoes and Sharks, and OTR Ultraviolet and OTR Blue. Interesting to see how the riders ride that last 250 metres. Do they open it up? Do they go in a line? Do they go widthways? What are they going to do? So it looks like Dingoes are just going to go in their pace line to the finish. Sharks have opened it up slightly. OTR Blue have gone for pace line, and I'm assuming OTR Ultraviolet will also a pace line. Still no one dropped from any of the teams that I could see. Yeah, but there are gaps. So Kada has got a bit of a gap, but he's going to try and close that up over the next couple of minutes. But he is falling back quite quickly, so I'm not sure he'll make it. Let's see. Kevin out front with Tony, Keith, Peter. With 3R Mushroom, we've got Mikkel out up front, now Wayne, Rajesh, JP, and Arnoud, Aku, Jojo, and Dennis. But Dennis has dropped the last kilometre. Yes. Some really strong pulls by Dennis towards the end. Jonathan out front, and they're 560 metres. Keith for OTR Black, JP for 3R Mushroom, Aku for ASRT. And I wonder whether that works with the pulling all the way to the right hand side for Tony. Keith just going back after the pull. Hopefully he's not going to get dropped. He looks as though he is, isn't he? He's 14, 15, 16 metres, yes. Unfortunately, so Keith just gets dropped at the end. 3 riders for OTR Black go through. Same for 3 on Mushroom. 8 SOT. With Dennis just coming in now. So no change at the end there. So hopefully the teams that want to go up have gone up. Teams that go down hopefully will come up next time. Thank you for watching. Let's get on with it in race 5. So watch and subscribe, and see you next week. Thanks everyone.